Someone once told me the grass is much greener.
I still need to watch all of this show in order.
There is a mixture of sadness, but at the same time there's a mixture of a little bit of humor, which you can definitely expect in this series.
Every character has multiple dimensions, really.
Obviously it's a scripted show, but they don't feel scripted. They feel real. They feel genuine.
If kids find value in things, I think there is value in them, because it is art in its own way, and it is very important.
Whatever it is, just own it, love what you do and do what you love.
If it's cool to you, then, who cares about what the others say?
Someone once told me the grass is much greener on the other side.
Hello and welcome to We're in Between, a podcast that discusses the entirety of As Told by Ginger once a week. Last week we talked about Cry Wolf, which was episode 8. This week we're going to be talking about The Right Stuff, that's episode 9. In this one, we have Macy and Courtney entering a high school level French class, which then ends up becoming an opportunity for them to have a pool party at Macy's place, kind of unwillingly volunteered, and we get this whole plot with these two high school girls who are planning to pull the string on the top half of Courtney's bikini, letting them know that she stuffs, which is fascinating, but we'll get there. And then we also have the side plot with Carl and Hoodsy trying to get Albert Einstein DNA for their school science fair project.
So yeah, it's very interesting, this particular episode, because we've seen Courtney paired up with various people. We've seen Courtney with Ginger, we've seen Courtney with Miranda, and also with Courtney with Dodie in the episode of Lice and Friends. So we've never had a Courtney and Macy episode. So yeah, we have that kind of little interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I would assume we get pretty much every possible pairing of the 5 of them by the end of the show, but this is probably the least expected one for me.
Yeah, they're very different people, too, and so it's kind of interesting to see them together and unexpected in a way, but it's, definitely, I like that we get to see that sort of a pairing that's not what you'd expect normally.
Yeah, definitely. So the episode begins with Ginger, Dodie, and Macy standing right by the Lucky High School. And Dodie is really excited about it because she thinks it's like the next big step towards adulthood. But Ginger doesn't really see that much of a big deal of it. In reality, it's Macy and Courtney who are going to be taking an advanced French class. And Macy is like really, really nervous about it. And Courtney is acting really stereotypical snooty French, saying, French words, and she's, really, really confident about going to a high school French class. She thinks like this is like the next step up towards being a high school student.
Yeah, they all have so much to prove, too, because Courtney, as she quickly explains to the other high schoolers that are in class with them, she goes, "We happen to be advanced preteens," which, what a statement.
Yeah, because there's the two, I guess, mean girls, the popular girls. It's
the plastics.
Yeah, they totally are. Oh, and you know what the advanced preteens reminds me of? I think it's a SpongeBob quote where he goes, "This isn't regular darkness. This is advanced darkness."
Yes. I think that's... my gut is telling me that it's the Rock Bottom episode, but I could be wrong on that.
Yes, it is the Rock Bottom episode.
Nice.
So yeah, and I really hate these stereotypical teenagers who think that, just because you're a grade lower than them, they think that they're the higher ups. It's the same thing with Wolfgang from Hey Arnold, in which he's a 5th grader. He's gonna push around the 4th graders. It's like, come on, you're a year older than them. What's the big deal? I mean, not to age myself, I'm at least almost 10 years older than Casey and Ashley, and I'm like, you shouldn't be liking these Nicktoons because you didn't grow up that I didn't, blah, blah, blah. It's like, shut up.
But then, when you're a kid, that age relativism is so real. Like, you always think the kids a year older than you know so much more than you, and it's just not true.
Yeah, I remember thinking, like, oh man, once I get to high school, I'm gonna be so put together, I'm gonna know what life is. And now I'm here, graduating college, and I'm like, yeah, when I get to, like, I don't know when I'll figure out what's happening, because certainly isn't 22, I can tell you that.
Certainly isn't 30 either.
But yeah, so they're having their whole thing, and Macy, not really thinking about it, they're talking about, like, pool parties are really cool, and Macy's like, oh, we couldn't have one at my place. My parents are almost always out of town. There'd be no supervision, which, of course, to the high school kids is like basically saying, I would love to have a party there. No parents will be there, which is, if anything, a plus to them.
Yeah, part of me has been thinking about this since we interviewed Aspen, and she talked about how much they all laughed listening to Jackie Harris Greenberg. Her voice for Macy is so funny. And one thing I sort of have been picking up lately is that Macy is genuinely funny. She's so clever. Like, you don't expect her to be because she's supposed to be this, like, nerd character, but she's the wittiest of all of them. She's the smartest, for sure, but she also just is so, like, she has this way with language and with comedy that I think is just so brilliant, and it's so underappreciated by the other characters in the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about Macy, Macy could have easily been like the stereotypical nerdy character, like the genius or the sick, kid that we all knew about who takes like inhalers and stuff like that. But no, there's actually more to Macy than just being that. She's actually a really well-rounded character, and she does improve a lot more over the series. And starting off with Macy, it's really nice to have a Macy-centric episode in which she's put into, like, this really tough situation that she doesn't know how to deal with it. And, this is apparent in this scene in which when Macy goes over to the bathroom, she hears Andrea and Chantal, the high school girls, talking about how much they think that Courtney is such a snobby person who's constantly flipping her hair back and forth, and she's flirting with Will, who's Darren's brother, who we were introduced to in Dare I Darren. And then they think about the idea about let's de-bikini her in front of the whole class to show her what she's made of or not made of. Similar to Dare I Darren, we have another suggestive topic, de-bikining a girl.
This is so messed up, man. Like, this is just so uncalled for. This is such a stupid thing that happens. Just the whole idea of, like, all of this and, like, stuffing and all of that, and that sort of pressure makes me upset that it is a thing. And I think that pressure is definitely real at that age, too, especially because, there's some girls that start wearing bras earlier than others, and there's, like, all that whole hubbub and mess that is, but they are uncalled for. That is just unnecessary.
I think we should let me monologue about this for like 5 minutes because I clearly have the most relevant experience to this topic. As disturbing as it kind of is, it also like almost made me emotional thinking about like how many girls grew from this show and had a piece of media that was helping them deal with some of these things that, frankly, most shows and parents and adults just pretty much ignore.
Yeah, think about it. I've even talked about this in my video, my 42-minute long video, I know, shame on me, about why As Told by Ginger was a groundbreaking yet overlooked Nicktoon. And that was a topic that I did discuss about that. It was a show that was focusing on teenagers, and it was more dramatic. Think about a Nicktoon that came out from 1991 up until that point. They were all comedic. Sure, we had, Doug and Hey Arnold, and they talked about everyday life situations, but it focused a lot on a balance between comedy and drama. With As Told by Ginger, it delves more into the fact that, yeah, we want to be able to tell a bigger story that focuses on what teenage girls are going through. And this came out around the same time as Caitlin's Way, which is another heavily overlooked show on Nickelodeon that pretty much nobody remembers. And it also delved with the fact that you have a teenage girl who was a delinquent, and she moved from Philadelphia to Montana to live with a family that she didn't know exist, and she's struggling with trying to fit in and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was around that time in which when Nickelodeon was starting to experiment with trying to break in for an older audience. And a lot of the times it just didn't work. Granted, for example, As Told by Ginger was overlooked for the longest time, and Caitlin's Way is still pretty obscure. So looking back on shows like this, it gives you a massive appreciation that we actually had something like it.
And just think about, our focus on FNN is obviously Nicktoons, and besides Wild Thornberrys and Ginger, of this era, they're all male-dominated shows. Even the shows that sort of have a different gender balance, like Rugrats, the protagonist is always male, without fail. So I think it's interesting that this show, and I wonder how much of that, frankly, had to do with the show not being as much of a success. If it had been about middle school boys, would it still be running? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I mean, that's actually a pretty interesting point. I mean, would we be talking about what boys would be going through? Like maybe a guy's going through puberty, or maybe a guy is going on a panty raid or something.
Right. Yeah, it would obviously be a very different show, but I wonder if it had been about middle school boys, how it would have been received.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with middle school boys, I think that they would have really cranked up the humor. Yeah, I think that would have been a really interesting thing had it been about a boy. But yeah, right. Going into Carl's and Hoodsy's plot, so there's a science fair coming up, and they found a magazine in a garbage can when they were kicked out of the bus because they said something mean about the bus lady, and they found a catalog that contains Albert Einstein DNA for $37. For one of the most influential scientists of all time, Albert Einstein's DNA for $37 is relatively cheap. I mean, think about it. A few years ago, somebody sold Justin Bieber's lock of hair for over $40,000. So what makes you think that Albert Einstein's wouldn't be a little bit more expensive?
Yeah, and also, I mean, with the preservation of that and all of the things that go into keeping the DNA and being able to even be sure that it is his, I would imagine $37 seems relatively cheap to me, too. I mean, and if you know anything, like, I do, like, research in a lab, and I can tell you that there's, like, proteins that we get that are, like, $300 for less than, like, a milliliter of them. So, yeah.
And also, it's clearly just not Albert Einstein's DNA, right? Can we just say that out in the open? Because there's just no way.
Right. It must not be.
Maybe it is Albert Einstein. Maybe it's Albert Einstein from Milwaukee.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
And honestly, though, even if it is that really an impressive project? Like, hey, look, this is his DNA, and then, like, so? Like, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like,
exactly, it doesn't mean a thing. I know that the whole the theme is what makes a genius, and just having DNA, it's like, what are you going to say about it? Just because a person has certain DNA that makes them special. It's kind of like when I think it was like there was an experiment about of the scientists who think that, if he's able to get a professor's brain and he puts it into another body, would that make him smarter? It's like, no, the brain is the same. The point is that some people are born with learning certain abilities, more than others. Some people have more intellect with art. Some people have more intellect with science. Some people have more intellect with math. And with a whole bunch of things. So, it doesn't really matter about DNA or, brains or anything like that. It's just, with Albert Einstein, he was, I mean, if you know about Albert Einstein, especially since there's a recent miniseries of Albert Einstein that just came out, if you're interested in checking that out. But yeah, Albert Einstein, he wasn't a good learner. He just didn't really do well in school, and he was basically told that he was just basically a failure who will never do anything good in the world. And, later on, he realized his full potential. He went into the world of science, and, look where it came out of it. The study of relativity and the atomic bomb, make of that what you will. But yeah, it doesn't really matter if you present anybody's DNA. It's just that if you know about Einstein and you can do a hypothesis on it, sure, but just having DNA is nothing.
Right. I also, really, really quick, I want to just make a quick comment back to our favorite character, Brandon, for like 2 seconds. When they announced the topic, Brandon goes like, can a monkey be a genius? Because my brother's monkey can use the microwave. And I was like, Brandon, could you stop?
Oh, but then, remember what the teacher said? She's like, can he make some sort of dish in it? I forgot what she said. And no, and she goes, well then he's not much of a genius, is he? I love this teacher. She reminds me of the only good character in Rugrats preschool days, the secretary.
Oh no!
That secretary was pretty high qual.
She's hysterical, yeah.
But yeah, moving forward, they end up deciding instead to kind of do a comparison of people's DNA and whatnot. But their side plot, I feel like, was pretty irrelevant overall in this one. Like, even as far as their side plots go. But we do go back to their sort of Macy's dilemma, and she's trying to decide whether or not to tell Courtney about the whole de-bikiniing thing. And Ginger tries to call up Courtney, and she's like, hey, I heard One Pieces are really in this year. And Courtney's like, oh, you must have heard that from Dodie. And of course Dodie gets all upset, but...
Oh, and then immediately gets over it once there's a piece of drama. That scene was so funny. And then, in the midst of all this, Maisie is sort of stressing out, and she goes, to think I could have been making lazy Susans in woodshop. I love that line. I love Macy.
I love Macy, too.
She's becoming one of my favorite characters in the show, which I know is hypocritical, because Lois and Hoodsie were both in my top 5, but...
Well, that's okay, because, you know, at the time that you guys did that list, we only did, you did, only 2 episodes on Macy? Come Back Little Seal Girl, and, I don't know, I think you did maybe another episode, maybe I wasn't there, so it was, 1 or 2 episodes.
We did a few other Gingers, but none really that centered around Macy.
Right.
Can we talk about when Ginger calls Courtney's room, and Miranda picks up and says, Courtney Gripling's room, Miranda speaking. Like, I feel like I have to bring up and, rag on Miranda every week, but man, she's frustrating.
Now they're in a bit of a predicament because they tried to convince Courtney to wear a one-piece so that she doesn't get de-bikinied, but she's gonna go for it anyway because... you know, polka dot bikinis are the thing in Paris. So now we finally cut into the pool party, and we have the girl showing up asking where Courtney is, and she's not there yet. And then we have Darren coming in, and, you know, he's agreeing to help out Ginger and the girls with the predicament with Courtney. And then Will comes in, pestering Darren, and Will gets pretty angry when Darren calls him by his real name, and he throws him into the pool. And then we finally cut into when Courtney shows up, and she's flirting with Will because why not? And then they start playing chicken in the pool. And this is one of my favorite scenes ever. So when Macy grabs more appetizers and refreshments, she sees these 2 high school students kissing, and then she's like, oh, "Shame on you! Your mother teaches Sunday school."
Yeah, that scene is great. We also get confirmation that Courtney is indeed a woo girl, because Ginger pulls her aside and goes, maybe we don't want to play chicken, maybe we want to, she's sort of trying to find a way to prevent what's about to happen from happening. And Courtney goes, oh, Ginger, I knew Miranda would do this, but not you, don't get jealous. She goes, now let's go play chicken, and lets out just a woo as she walks back to the pool. And it's like, you know what? That makes sense.
I feel like you yourself are a self-proclaimed woo girl, are you not, Casey?
I am. That's true. So Courtney and I are akin in that. Sorry, I have one more quote before it becomes irrelevant. My favorite Macy quote of the whole episode, when they're on the phone with Courtney. Ginger's on the phone with Courtney with Macy and Dodie listening in. And they're talking about the bikini again, and Courtney says, I wouldn't be seen without one. And Macy just kind of offhandedly says, wanna bet? Such a zinger.
Such an amazing one-liner there. I feel like that is one of the reasons I love her humor so much, too, is kind of how offhandedly it is. It's not thrown in your face kind of humor. It's more off to the side, casual. But basically what ends up happening is they're playing chicken. The girls, Ginger and them, are all getting prepped for what's about to happen. The girl unties Courtney's bikini, and they are all, prepped for it. Macy throws... one of those inflatable inner tubes that's I don't even know what kind of animal that's supposed to be.
I think it's a duck.
Something like that. It's like a duck.
Of course Macy is using one at this cool party.
Yes.
And also she has those those nostril blocking.
Yeah, the nose plug thing, yeah.
Nose plug things, and she has
I didn't notice that.
She has the nose plug things, and she has the goggles.
Very Macy. They basically keep Courtney covered up, fish the bikini and the bubble wrap, which is what she was using to stuff, fish it out of the pool, and make it so that, it's not a whole conundrum, but it's a little worrisome for a bit, and that's basically that. And Courtney makes a comment. She's like, I guess I see who my real friends are. And Dodie, of course, gets really excited, saying, oh, she thinks we're her real friends. Because Dodie's obsessed with all of the popularity, as always.
So the episode concludes with the science fair, and Mrs. Gordon is looking at all the samples from the high school students, and they are trying to state their hypothesis about that, these bodily functions are comparative to Albert Einstein's DNA. But then Blake comes along and says, sorry, Foutley, tough luck on you. Mrs. Gordon, can you please take a look at my Albert Einstein DNA? So we didn't mention this at all because it doesn't really matter for this plot. But earlier in the episode, they're trying to save up money for the Albert Einstein DNA, and Hoodsie is completely hungry because they have to skip lunch. So we have Blake coming in, and he's eating his steak and potatoes, and he says, "Are you not eating? Oh, I can see, is this your part of your science project?" And then Hoodsie basically blabs out the fact that they're gonna do the Albert Einstein DNA as their science project, and And when Carl finds out that there wasn't any more when they order it, Hoodsie never brings up the fact that, oh, I must have told Blake this by accident. Maybe he was the one who did it. So, yeah, this is absolutely has no relevance whatsoever. It's just a, quirky Carl and Hoodsie side plot. Definitely not one of my favorites and not one out of the ordinary, but yeah. So Blake is disqualified from the science fair and the boys don't have to go to summer school, and that's pretty much it.
What I do like about the side plot is the sort of adult side we see of Carl that's always hysterical. How well he performs the whole adult thing. Like when he's on the phone with the catalog people and he was like, I just adored your catalog. Anyway, to business. And he's just so bizarre.
I also want to throw out a quick line from the teacher. She says, science is a study, one which must be experienced and proven. And as the sciencey human being who I am, I felt that spoke to my soul. I love science, and I love that woman. So.
Yeah, she's incredible. Oh, and you guys know how much I love titles, and I love the title of this episode, because I feel like it has sort of a double meaning. There's the right stuff with Courtney, stuffing, obviously, and then there's Carl's obsession with getting the right stuff, the sort of DNA sample. I know I'm taking a loose interpretation of the word, but when he ends up using earwax and that kind of thing, I feel like it runs parallel.
Which is really clever, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. I think this sums up all of our thoughts. Are we good to move to our yay or nays on this episode?
Yep.
I think so.
All right, I'll start it off. I give this one a yay. I enjoyed it. I think it covers an interesting topic. I like, again, seeing that sort of Macy-Courtney dynamic for once. I like delving into that a bit more. So overall, I'm gonna give it a yay.
As for me, I'll give it a slight yay as well. Leaning a little bit towards the meh because of Carl and Hoodsie's side plot, but the Courtney and Macy plot really makes up for it. It's really entertaining. It's a dynamic that we don't really see very often, and it's pretty entertaining, I have to say. And Macy has some great one-liners, and yeah, she's one of the best things about this episode, and Courtney with her over-the-top, trying to act cool because she's in a French class with high school students. So yeah, I give it a yay, but leaning towards the meh because of Carl and Hoodsie's plots.
Yeah, Patricia, you pretty much summed it up for me. I give it a pretty lukewarm yay. I think anything that focuses on Macy, I'm going to have to give a yay, but the B plot does drag it down just a little bit for me. So, overall, enjoyed this episode. Alright, well thank you guys so much for your comments on the YouTube channel, on our Twitter, and of course on our forum, we'reinbetween.freeforums.net. We're really enjoying the feedback with you guys, and we love seeing how many of you are watching along with us, so that's something we weren't sure if it was going to actually happen or not, and it looks like it's happening, so thank you. You can find the Friday Night Nicktoons podcast at FNN_podcast, and that's about it from me.
Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter at Patty_B_Miranda. So, yes, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.